We're going to do another rabbit recipe today. This one is a Hannah Glass one called a brown fricassee. Thanks for joining us today. So Hannah Glass's cookbook, The Art of Cookery, is a mainstay of research for English cooking in the 18th century. It was probably one of the most popular of the cookbooks, and this recipe is a brown fricassee. And she says you can use rabbits or you can use chicken. If you use a rabbit, you want to have the skin off. If you're using chicken, you want to use it with the skin on. Let's get started on this rabbit. Hannah Glass calls to have these our meat pieces cut up into small-ish pieces, and then we need some egg yolk. So I've got 3 egg yolks whisked up here, and then we're gonna bread these pieces. And let's make our sort of breading here. I've got standard breadcrumbs. A lot of people ask about what happens when you chip the loaf off, chip the crust off of an 18th century loaf of bread, which happened so often. Well, they turned them into breadcrumbs and they used them all the time in these recipes. So we've got breadcrumbs here. It also calls for a little bit of nutmeg in this breading mix. Hannah Glass calls for it. It's right here. And a little mace, which is the close cousin of nutmeg. So we've got some breadcrumbs here. We've got some mace and nutmeg, and they're all nice and mixed up. Now we just do the standard technique here. We're going to take our meat pieces, run them through the yolk, then through our breading. So apparently fricassee recipes show up in English cooking in the 16th century, probably coming over from France. Generally, at least early on, these fricassee recipes were a white sauce or a white fricassee, but this one, obviously right there in the title, she's calling this a brown fricassee. All these pieces are breaded now. It's time to go over to the fire and to get a frying pan going so that we can brown these up. Our pan is nice and warm. I've got some butter melted in here, and let's put these in and get them browned. Now that our rabbit pieces are browned up, she says to actually take off any excess butter, but all the butter is cooked out here. We don't have to worry about that. And in go our liquid ingredients. We have some brown gravy we're gonna put in here. And it says a half a pint of white wine. I'm probably not using quite as much rabbit as she used, so I'm not gonna use a ton of that. We can also bring in some mushrooms, she calls for, and a piece of butter rolled in flour. And now this is just gonna simmer until it thickens up. Let me tell you, while this was cooking, the smells were incredible. This turns out as a wonderful smelling dish. I mean, it's a fricassee, so it isn't the most beautiful thing, but hey, let's find out what it tastes like. That's where the proof is, right? Well, get some of those mushrooms. Superb flavors and tastes. I can tell, I mean, this would make a really good chicken dish, but the rabbit works really well, especially in this brown fricassee. I think that's why she called for this. You can see poultry kind of going into a white fricassee, but in this brown one, you want more of that earthy flavor, like the dark meat of a chicken. That's what rabbit's like. This has got some wonderful flavors and tastes in it, and it takes a little bit of time on this. You really do kind of have to let it cook for a while, like so many of these period recipes, but it turns out wonderful. It would be perfect for a historic home setting if you're doing a period meal. You could do this over a campfire. It might be a little trickier. It takes a little bit of time. You definitely have to control that flame and not overcook this meat when you put it in that frying pan. But such a wonderful dish. Hannah Glass's cookbook, The Art of Cookery. It's one of the best ones to have in your library if you're interested in historical cooking. I've got a link down in the description. That's an Amazon link, so you can take a look at that if you're interested in Hannah Glass's cookbook. And I want to thank you. We come along, we experiment with these things. Some of them are real similar to modern dishes, and other ones are very, very different. And I just love exploring these foods, these flavors, these aromas. It's so much fun. Thank you for joining me today as we savor the flavors and the aromas of the 18th century.